are you able to summarise kind of what work will be going on at the moment with part of the line up here in the northeast? Again, it came about because of some adverse weather.
Yeah, well, the collapse of this parapet, so that's kind of the wall that goes along the side of the bridge. It's not entirely confirmed what the process for that failure was, but it's very likely that a contribution of kind of poor weather and a variety of factors. But maintenance sort of perhaps not being as well funded as it ideally would be could also be a factor. So that there are a few things at play there. Yeah, so the work they're going to need to do, first of all, they need to take the track off, or at least one of the two tracks. There's two tracks kind of on the curve on the bridge. One of those tracks off, and then essentially reinforce and relay the parapet of the structure on kind of that wall on the side of the bridge, replace that in a more structural form, kind of so it's stronger and can cope with the ballast loads. That's the stones under the track, and then put the tracks back on and make sure, and then run through the machine that makes the line nice and smooth, and then hopefully reopen the line to traffic.
And Network Rail have mentioned that they're not just repairing it or doing a quick job, that it is taking a while because they're trying to make some improvements. And obviously, at the moment, with less services, it is an ideal time to do that. If we were in a time where we were running at a full service, do you think that might have been different? They might have had to try get this done quickly, and actually, it maybe in some ways having a bit of a lockdown like we do at the moment, it's actually a bit of a blessing to really make an improvement there.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a definite advantage. I mean, it's frustrating because a lot of people, the few people who do want to travel on that line, have already had months and months of disruption, and perhaps only getting used to using the line again. The key workers taking the train up and down between Aberdeen and Dundee, but yeah, it's certainly an advantage not to have the normal passenger levels. If we remember some of the incidents, the landslides that have happened, for example, the one that really comes to mind is when that bridge was damaged just north of Carlisle, so kind of near the Scottish border. It's near Lockerbie, I think, wasn't it, a few years back? That shut down the West Coast Main Line, and it was right at the peak of traffic. It was kind of Christmas traffic, really, really challenging. So this is definitely an opportunity. We're not disrupting as many passengers. But it's not. It's never ideal. So certainly there's an opportunity. I think Network Rail will have taken the opportunity to perhaps do a slightly more substantial repair to the structure than otherwise they might have.
And up here in Scotland, I mean, do we have maybe some older lines? Does that mean that sometimes those kind of problems can crop up a little bit more? Is that something that we maybe could see a trend of? I mean, maybe it's just been the kind of perfect storm in the last year. Up here, as you say, there's probably been less time trains have been running than maybe they have been. Is this something we might have to expect going forward, or do you think it is maybe a bit of a coincidence that you have two big major repairs kind of in a similar period of time?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? For two failures, pretty substantial failures to happen on the same very short stretch of line within quite a close period of time it's you don't want lightning to strike twice, really. As an infrastructure person, my background's in infrastructure, and I've kind of ridden in the cab of trains going at 125 miles an hour, you very quickly learn that the drivers implicitly trust the infrastructure people. So the last thing you want to do as an infrastructure person, whether that's a designer, a maintainer, or someone building the line, is to break that bond of trust, because then the drivers aren't going to be, they're not going to be able to drive the trains properly. The whole service breaks down. So absolutely, it's not reassuring. I think in terms of age of infrastructure, Scotland's infrastructure is not necessarily, actually, arguably, it's newer than, on average, newer than a lot of the lines sort of south of the border. So not necessarily overall age. One challenge that Scotland's railways do have is a general, because of the lower traffic, they've had kind of, relatively speaking, less maintenance over the years as well. So as traffic starts to rise, particularly given that Scotland's current government has got a reasonably pro-rail approach, so they are encouraging more people to use sustainable transport modes. That means that you've got more traffic using the lines, on lines that have not had as much, not had a huge amount of maintenance over the years. So that does put undue pressure and stress on the infrastructure. Combine that with the changing climate, there's the increasing effects of extreme rainfall and extreme dry as well. It's that mixture of rain and dry that really causes problems. And yeah, you kind of got the perfect storm. So lots of challenges, really. These are the side effects of wanting more people and things to travel by rail. You need to invest in the infrastructure and keep it working.
And we mentioned lockdown and kind of the impact that's having. Clearly, we want key workers who are travelling between Aberdeen and Dundee to get back to a bit of regularity there. But is it a good opportunity for, if there's anything else in terms of maintenance that Network Rail spot, to just get it done now, whether it be up in the northeast, whether it be elsewhere? considering that there is less rail traffic at the moment, or is it maybe not that simple, especially with social distancing guidelines and things like that?
Well, it's certainly an opportunity. The challenge you have with big infrastructure projects is that you can't kind of magic them up like that. They have to be designed, they have to be signed off, and you have to get the right people and equipment in the right place. And actually, a lot of those things, particularly the people and equipment, there's a long waiting list. There's a long list of different projects that are kind of, we plan railway projects 2, even 3 years in advance, because you've got to get all the right, the cranes and the right sort of rail equipment all in the right place at the right time. And certain people, like signaling testers and commissioners, for example, there's a role where there are tens of them in the entire country, so you really have to book them miles in advance. So there are challenges with kind of rejiggling the schedule for different projects, and also the different projects all interact with each other. So sometimes you have to deliver one to allow others to work. So for example, track work first and then followed by signaling projects, for example. However, as I say, this is an opportunity, and we have seen some rearrangement of projects to take advantage of the reduced passenger numbers. So it has been happening. There is the opportunity there. The railway managers, particularly in Scotland, are aware of that opportunity and have been, where they can, trying to grasp it.
Just finally, you mentioned kind of the impact that changing climate has on all of this. Is there anywhere else in the world there's maybe an example of how other places are dealing with that and trying to, I suppose, weatherproof almost tracks, or is it kind of difficult? Is it not something that's so much been solved yet that we know how we can tackle that?
Every single country is kind of suffering a different impact from climate change. Given that we're kind of stuck out in the Atlantic, generally our issues are related to water and how much of it is splashing onto us at any given time. But also, wind and those sorts of effects as well as extremes of cold as well. Climate change, global warming has the kind of strange effect in some parts of the world where you end up with extremes of both cold and hot. So we have to deal with certain challenges. The challenges in other parts of the world are related to perhaps heat specifically. So, things like how much heat is going into the rails and the risk of them buckling. That's a problem we have in the UK, but it's even more of a dramatic problem in places with more of a continental climate, where you've got like down to -40 and up to +50 degrees, that sort of range of temperatures. So yeah, it's a challenge. Every country has different challenges, really, and how we deal with this. We have a unique challenge in Great Britain of the age of our infrastructure being, particularly in relation to earthworks. So the kind of the piles of mud that support the railway or kind of are the banks at either side of the railway, those are quite old and were built before engineers had a really good understanding of how that material behaves, how soil behaves. So we do have a unique challenge in relation to earthworks. But every country has its own set of challenges. And across Europe, actually, there's a kind of a concern where climate is more similar. There is a concerted effort to understand things like remote condition monitoring, so you can kind of keep an eye on the condition of the infrastructure without having to actually be there. Better weather forecasting, this helps us. Better climate modeling, because this helps us plan ahead what sort of inputs we need. Lots of different things that we have to understand. But yeah, every country has to deal with it differently.